Hello and welcome to Thought for January the 9th. Our readings are Genesis chapters 17 and 18, Psalm 19, 20 and 21, and Matthew chapter 11. And our thought is, to what shall I liken this generation? We read this morning how Jesus asked the question, to what shall I liken this generation? Matthew 11 verse 16. And he gave a strange answer. Each generation has had those who search for answers as to the meaning of life. But today many think they all have the answers. John the Baptist, shut up in prison, appears to have wanted reassurance when he sent his disciples to Jesus asking, "Are you really the one?" Notice how Jesus never gives plain yes or no answers. His response was to say, "Look at what is happening and consider events in the light of what God revealed through the prophets." Verses 2 to 6. Those with their own way of thinking were offended at him. He refused to fit into a mould. We read today of Genesis, of Abraham's conversion with the angel of the Lord in chapter 9:18, who said, "Because the outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave, I will go down to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me." Verse 21. Abraham obtains a promise that even if only 10 righteous are found there, God would not destroy the city. But only 3 were found and saved. Tragic. Yet Jesus, as we read today, mentions Sodom, saying in verse 22 that if the amazing miracles that the people of Capernaum had witnessed had been done in Sodom, they would have responded and it would not have been destroyed. Jesus then states, "I tell you that it will be more tolerable on that day of judgment for the land of Sodom than for you." Verse 24. Well, what is this telling us? At the day of judgment, it will not be a case of getting a high enough mark, like you need to be able to go to university. Rather, God will know how you have responded according to the evidence available to you. No one will earn a place in God's kingdom. The cities in which Jesus did his miracles failed the test, as we read in verse 20 and 21. But all he accepts into his kingdom will need his mercy and grace, for he sees the motivations of our heart against the background of the circumstances in which we have lived. Jesus said the generation that heard him, in verses 16 through to 19, were like children at play who refused to grow up, willfully misinterpreting the actions of Jesus, saying he was a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. So what would he say of today's generation and his attitude to the Bible? Are you influenced by that attitude? Today the world has discovered far more of the absolute wonders of creation, and yet it refuses to face the obvious meaning of the evidence, just as many in that generation that saw the wonders and refused Jesus. Each will answer for their own failures. What failures will you have to answer for? Well, thank you once again for joining us for Thought for the Day, where together we can open up the pages of God's Word, knowing that Word to be a lamp to our feet and a light to our path.